Let me lick you up. Let me lick you down. Oh, yeah. Boxy time here on the July 31st. It's Thursday. We're getting back inside the box after somewhat of a week off, although Rafe Bartholomew, my co-hostess with the mostess, did join us on Morning Combat last week. And by the way, Rafe, that was spectacular. Thank you for joining us.
It was real and it was spectacular.
Thank you so much. Detroit's finest, or at least suburban Detroit, and a New York Times bestselling author. Welcome to Inside the Box, live and direct on the Brian Campbell Experience, a real original name for a YouTube channel. But today, we got a lot to talk about, from that big upset against Shiro to your boy, Xander Zayas, to a lot of other ish inside and around the box. But you might argue one, Rafa Bartholomew, that there's no bigger story inside the box right now than what these than what is going on with the Ali Act deconstruction / reformation /
I believe it's a revival act. It's about revival. We're reviving the box.
Okay. Well, we have a special guest to bring on to talk about it, and an important one, because I don't think, based on his appearances in our DMs with the great Candy Lickers, the Jackers, all of our longtime devoted listeners from way back in the day when we was doing doping. I don't know if he's on the same side of the street in this argument, but he is educated. He is coming to us today from the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. Hey, never meet your heroes, never appear on a podcast that used to no longer exist. Let's bring him in right now. Logan Dobson is in the house. And Logan, you got me fired up to bring a civilian onto this prestigious podcast, but you also bring with you some, should I say, DC political connection / experience? Like, this actually works beyond the fact that we just like you.
Brian, this man is a professional. Logan, explain to him your career in politics, please.
Absolutely. Well, really good to be on with you guys. Obviously, been a fan for many years. I think at one point, Rafe asked me to come on State of Combat, the dearly departed podcast that does not exist, but I don't think we could make that work. So I'm super excited to have an excuse to hop on here. But Rafe, you're correct. I've worked in Washington, D.C., in politics for my entire career. So since I graduated college all the way back in 2011, so 15 years, longer than I'd care to admit. But I've worked on Capitol Hill, I've worked in campaigns, and I've worked in the sort of kind of advocacy world that surrounds legislation, trying to generate grassroots support for bills passing through Congress, and, trying to influence members of Congress to vote the way that I think they should vote on things.
That is fantastic. And when would you say you fell into bed with us? When did you come around for these two Wash guys right here?
It's pretty funny. I have a fairly distinct memory. So I got into boxing as exercise in 2015. I had been a runner for a long time, and I was doing sort of other stuff. And I was like, I gotta figure out a way to get stronger, physically, that doesn't involve lifting weights, because I hated lifting weights. And then after about a year of doing boxing as working out, I was like, I should look into watching the actual sport that the people who do this stuff do. So I started getting more into pro fights. The one that really turned it, all the way up to 11 for me, that I have a distinct memory of, was actually Joshua Klitschko. I caught that. It was on at 5:00 in the afternoon on Showtime, because it was the weird sort of dual broadcast where it was on Showtime and live and HBO later in the evening. And I thought it was such an incredible fight. It had all those knockdowns that, it was kind of that back and forth action. And it was really around that fight and kind of after that I started seeking out, I need to start, reading more boxing media and listening to podcasts. And I think that's about when I found SOC
The biggest
so
mistake you've ever made, sir.
No, well, in some ways, I mean, you guys know how this is, but I talk to my buddies here in DC who are all football fans, baseball fans, whatever, and they'll be like, "Oh, so what's happening in boxing?" I'm like, most of the time you don't want to know. If you do, I'm going to need about 37 minutes of your time to get through, what it means to be a world champion at this point.
Well, we're going to get into you a lot more, but the fans are excited to have you. 3 quick questions from the fans here that I'm going to need you to address. First of all, from our boy Monzo, does Logan know Luke Thomas in Washington, D.C.?
I do not know Luke, although I know he's, around here somewhere. We were talking about this a little bit before we came on, but DC, despite not being much of a fight town, I mean, I think famously we had like a late career Mike Tyson fight in our convention center.
Right. The last one of his pre-Jake Paul pro career.
Yeah. So despite not being a huge pro fight town, there's a high proportion of boxing journalists at least here. So we got Luke, we got Dan Raphael out in the suburbs, and it's as active as we can be, I guess.
What was the name of that guy from that blog, Rafe, who lived in DC?
Oh, Starks, Queensberry Rules,
Starks,
legend.
and then there was also the other guy.
Has I think he actually worked in more the policy, some sort of the internet security policy think tank in DC, but ran the Queensberry Rules, an early, very influential boxing blog. Actually, you may be familiar with the man known as Ratcatcher on Twitter.
Yes.
Used to write for the Queensberry Rules all the time. Cut his teeth there.
Hey, shout out to Greisman too, big DC boxing guy. All right, second question from the fans here.
And Swain, because he'll kill us if we don't mention him. Matt Swain, shout out.
I think they're referencing your resemblance to sometime Morning Combat contributor Aaron Bronstetter of MMA and Canada fame, who famously said on our show that he was a varsity athlete in high school, and we unfortunately laughed in his face. Did you play varsity sports in high school? They want to know.
No, I did. I think varsity eating with some JV chess club was my kind of high school experience. I lost a bunch of weight and got into working out post high school, post college.
All right, and final question for you before we show a little bit about your boxing background, by the way. Spoiler alert.
Oh, no.
Probably the biggest topic people want to know, infrared. Your thoughts on Building 7. I mean, we can always...
That's a New York question. I'm happy to talk about the Pentagon, but
don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
All right, enough of that. What we love about you, Logan, is unlike us keyboard warriors, you actually put on the gloves a few times for some... like charity type situation, some white collar crime type thing. I got a little snippet here to show the people that you was once a badass.
Now entering the ring, fighting out of the red corner, he weighed in at 185 pounds. Fighting out of Downtown Boxing Club, trained by Dave White, a communications consultant with a little something to say here in the ring tonight. Please welcome Logan Dobson.
Peak male performance right there.
Oh.
The tribute to Mauricio Herrera, the El Maestro, the farmer's tan. I like it.
It's the only tan I've got. I do appreciate you showing the walkout and not the 3 rounds of action after, where I was getting sort of run around the ring. Although it's funny story. So I've done that charity event 2 times. It's called Haymakers for Hope. So shout out and a plug to them. If it's in your city, you should sign up and do it. They raise money for cancer research. And they're officially USA Boxing sanctioned events. So like there's real judges there, there's real referees there. And in the ring for that fight, I recognize that one. That was my first one. It was announced that I lost by decision. Which was, a bummer, but the other guy was fine, so I wasn't too mad about it. But if you go and check the USA Boxing record later, they just wrote it down as I won, which was real insight to me as to sort of the accuracy. We hear all the time about these prospects. It's like, oh, this guy was 98-2 as an amateur. He won 7 Gold Gloves, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, they gave me a win that I didn't get in the ring, and I don't know if the guy said it in the ring wrong or if they wrote it down wrong later. So it was some helpful exposure to the amateur boxing world.
We're calling BoxRec Gray right now. He's going to get on the case and have that overturned like tout sweet, maintenant, right away.
Quickly, Rafe, before we dive into this, Luke Nocita of the main card minute and MK fame wants you to explain your cool hat as I let Reggie Jackson out. Please take the floor.
I'd love to. So this hat was made by some friends of mine in Pasadena. They have a jersey company called New Jersey Sets. I don't think any of them are actually from New Jersey, but it makes sense because they mostly sell jerseys. They work with the Venice League out there. I think they worked with the Drew League last year. They've been doing it for, I don't know, close to a decade. They are, in case you were wondering, in the Filipino basketball community, as well as the fighting Senador Manny Pacquiao community. They're like going way back. There's great pictures of my friend Kevin's daughter with Manny when she was a little baby and Manny giving her a kiss at Griffith Park. Anyway, this hat, they sent me, I think as a gift when I bought something else. And it's like a Pasadena basketball hat because although Portland is, I think, the city of roses, Pasadena has the Rose Parade and all that other stuff. And they're from Eagle Rock, where I used to live, and Pasadena, which is right next door. So that's it. And it is a cool hat.
There it is. I think if I do this and then do this, there we go. We'll get Logan in the middle there. All right, Logan, we want to turn the floor back to you. We appreciate your expertise here on this. When this Ali Act amendment hit, when the bipartisan Congress bill was proposed, although it's not expected, I don't believe, to be voted on until later in the fall. Look, maybe me on this side of the media who's been a little leery about the evil empire coming in and continuing the tentacles of the two combat sport monopsony that TKO, Ari Emanuel, Dana White, and now Turki Alalshikh are a part of in pro wrestling and in MMA. For me, this was just like, hey, here's some specific legislation for you over there at Zuffa Boxing to help you start a third monopsony, whatever that word even means. I got to call John S. Nash to find out. But that's my take, okay? What is your take on the good, the bad, anything else that has to do with this amendment that TKO is trying to push through Representative Brian Jack and then that other lady who fought MMA?
And just to get us all on the same page, not about the word monopsony, which I think is how it is said, but I don't really know. But more, it is a new law, a new bill, a bill that would become a new law, not an amendment, right? I mean, you can't amend a law that already, well, maybe you can. Anyway, please, Mr. DC, help us.
Okay. So there are a lot to cover here. So one, just as from a Schoolhouse Rock perspective, you can amend laws that have already been enacted. That is certainly possible. And this bill does, in fact, amend a previous law, but you are slightly incorrect in that this does not amend the Ali Act as you commonly think about it. So the Ali Act, passed decades and decades ago, which sort of regulated the allowable relationships between promoters, belt issuers, managers, all that sort of stuff. So that is affected by this bill, but it's not really directly amended by it. And so, we can back up even further. And actually, first, I just want to give like a brief disclosure here. I am not working on this issue in any capacity, so I'm not here as like a paid spokesman. I'm not working like with or for Representative Brian Jack, who's the primary sponsor of this. I actually don't even know him personally. I have some friends who do and say he's like a great guy and super passionate about boxing, and that's why he's interested in this. But I just want to get that out there. So I'm not coming at this from sort of a spokesperson perspective. This is all, someone who's worked in DC for a long time and who also cares a lot about boxing. So the bill is called the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act. And I think that the motivation behind it, as best I could tell, I mean, I've read sort of the interviews that you guys have in Sports Illustrated. I think Representative Jack did a really good interview with Chris Mannix there because Mannix, pushed him a little bit, but allowed Jack to sort of lay out his kind of view on this. Basically, what people I think need to understand about the bill is that it doesn't change anything about the current system if people want to continue in the current system. So like, it doesn't make the sanctioning bodies illegal. It doesn't establish some sort of American National Commission that oversees, the WBC or the WBA or, any of the current fights that are happening. It does make, I think there are like two small changes that would affect the current system that are on fighter minimum pay, raising it to, I think, 150 a round. And then some, I think it's like a health insurance provision, basically requiring them to have a little bit more coverage than currently does. What it does do, and Brian, you sort of know this better than ever, is the UFC model as currently constructed, or the Bellator model, really, or I think even like the Pride, you would know more about this, like the model that exists in the UFC, the model that exists in MMA, even beyond the UFC, where generally speaking, there's an organization that has belts and also promotes its own fights and holds its own events. That is illegal in the United States. Like you couldn't do that if you wanted to. And what this bill would do is essentially say something like that with a long list of regulations around it. So even more stuff around fighter safety, even more stuff around pay, even more stuff around requiring medical exams, all that sort of stuff. If you want to do that, it would be legal after this bill is passed. So, Brian, I think I know, are very passionate, obviously, about UFC in particular, and you have kind of strong opinions about the people that run it and the way that it is run, and I get that. This bill would theoretically allow the same people who run the UFC to establish something like the UFC in boxing, but it's important to note, it would also allow anyone else who wants to try that to establish the same sort of thing in boxing. And critically, it would introduce that sort of competition. So when I've been talking with people around DC who sort of support this, competition comes up a lot. The current system, I don't know what your guys' perspective is. Well, I know from what I listen to on the podcast, I don't think any of us love the current system, of boxing. Like, it's hard to explain to fans. It's hard to follow. It's difficult for stars to grow in this sport. I think a big reason why they're calling it, for instance, the Revival Act, is because boxing needs reviving in the United States. We love it. The devoted fans love it, but it is not a mainstream sport in the same way that it was when, the original Ali Act passed decades ago. It is not, on CBS. It is not, being seen by millions of people. It needs a revival. And I think the idea behind this is, hey, there's combat sport. There are other combat sports where a different business model is working, at least in terms of raising the profile of the sport. If you just look at the popularity of UFC over the past 20 years and the popularity of boxing over the past 20 years, sorry, I shouldn't even say the popularity of UFC. The popularity of all MMA. It's
Sure.
Pretty clear, which of these business models is providing for a more popular and growing sport in America, period. And so I think the idea of this legislation is let's let that be an option, and we'll see if it works. And if it doesn't work, if no boxers want to join one of these, what they call UBOs, which I think it stands for Unified Boxing Organizations, if they're not paying well enough, nobody will join them. If they're not doing a good job putting on shows, nobody will join them. If they're not, delivering good products for the fans and sort of a good situation for the fighters, then they won't work. But right now, it's not even legal to try. And so I think the idea here is, hey, this is obviously working in MMA. To grow that sport, let's at least let people try it in boxing.
All right. Before we go hard on just yelling at each other here, which is going to happen, especially when I get into Brian. I just, given your experience on the Hill, how likely do you see this bill to pass and become law and go through the whole legislative process? Is because at this point in time, it almost seems like at least from the way I follow politics, through listening to podcasts and trying to be informed, but I'm not an insider. It's Congress passes a giant budget bill once a year. They shoehorn in as much stuff as I guess the Senate parliamentarian will allow, and then nothing happens. Then they fight the rest of the year. Right now, the whole thing is closed because no one wants to vote on an Epstein resolution in the House, I should say.
Which Brian is very grateful for.
Yeah, I've seen Brian on an island. It ain't pretty. I guess how would you handicap the chances of this actually making it through the legislative process?
Yeah, look, you're right to be skeptical. there are hundreds of bills introduced every congressional session, which lasts 2 years. So I'll get real technical here. My friends who work on the Hill will sessions can last shorter than that. Every Congress, which is a 2-year period, hundreds of bills get introduced. Now, some of those are what you call messaging bills. Somebody introduces 2 lines to say, we're going to we are going to rename a post office after somebody, or say, post office bills actually aren't really messaging bills because they oftentimes do pass, but some of them, they're not impacting the daily life of many people. And then there's some that, get introduced just so that someone can go out and campaign on the fact I introduced legislation to raise the minimum wage to $1 million or whatever they're trying to say. This bill So just in general, the odds of any given bill that is introduced becoming law are pretty long. This one has several things going for it that I would say, just as, again, as someone who's worked on Capitol Hill as sort of an outside observer here. One, its primary sponsor, Representative Jack. He is a freshman member of Congress from Georgia, but he is definitely seen within the Republican conference, which he's a Republican, as a real rising star. And a lot of that comes from his background. He worked in previous Trump administration. He's been sort of a known quantity in the kind of operative world, but also in the, sort of political, doers kind of thing. Like, he's seen as someone who actually gets stuff done, who's in DC to work hard on issues and actually push things across the finish line. And more importantly, someone with the juice to make that happen. Reason number two to be slightly optimistic, if you want a bill like this to pass, it has bipartisan support. So Sharice Davids, a member of Congress from Kansas, she's a Democrat. She's supporting the legislation as well. I think Brian mentioned, I believe she has a background as like an amateur MMA fighter, which is relatively cool as members of Congress go. Yeah, most members of Congress are like, have much more boring backgrounds than that. I won't disparage any of the fine representatives here in DC. Three, like Donald Trump is a known boxing fan, and like Donald Trump has a lot of juice on Capitol Hill with Republicans controlling both members of Congress. Like that's just a fact. And like, I don't know personally if like Donald Trump has engaged on this legislation, if he's even heard of it. But like, if you were wanting to pass a piece of boxing related legislation, you would want to have someone like Donald Trump, who obviously cares very deeply about the sport, involved. Now, Rafe, you were totally right about the legislative process. I believe this bill has been referred to committee. So what that means is a bill is introduced. They basically established, okay, what is this bill generally about, and under which House committee do we generally send the issues of that nature to? So it's been sent off to, I was actually checking, it's been sent to the Committee on Education and Workforce, and also sent to the Committee on Energy and Commerce. So sometimes there's jurisdiction sort of.
Ain't that Linda McMahon's ball field?
Yeah, well, so Linda McMahon is the Commerce Secretary, but this is the House Committee on Commerce, which technically oversees the Commerce Department, and so we could conduct some oversight and is in frequent contact with the Commerce Secretary. So there could definitely be some pull there as well. But what'll generally happen in a situation like this is, they'll probably try to hold a hearing. And so they'll bring in maybe some experts to testify, talk about, and, people who are opposed to the bill have a chance to bring in witnesses. People who are in favor of it have a chance to bring in witnesses, and the members of Congress can ask them questions. There's like the legislative process. Other people can propose amendments to this bill. They could try and make changes to it. If you say, fighter pay should be higher, should be lower, like there should be, more qualifications, more medical exams, whatever, so there is a legislative process it'll go through. And then, Rafe, you're sort of correct. There's a couple different ways it could pass. A bill can pass of its own accord. So it can pass the House, it gets sent over to the Senate. The Senate refers it to their own committees, makes any amendments that they want. Senate passes it. Once both houses of Congress passed, it goes to the president. That's like classic schoolhouse rock, bill becomes a law stuff. Or, as you sort of noted, there are occasions where large bills get passed that cover a lot of different stuff, and a lot of those bills just sort of end up put in there. There probably will be another couple of those, either around government funding issues or around just some sort of sometimes it's like national security stuff. Basically what happens is like a bill becomes a sort of must pass vehicle. Like if we don't pass this bill, then like large parts of the government will shut down. And whenever something must pass, you members of Congress get real tempted to start, putting more stuff in there because they want it to pass along with it. So I could see something like that happening, but it's important to note, like, usually the stuff that gets inserted into a larger bill like that has still gone through some measure of the legislative process. So you'll still have probably had a hearing. You've had people had a chance to offer amendments, and then just instead of trying to pass this by itself, we're just going to slide it up into a larger bill. So in terms of handicapping, it really comes down, I think, in my opinion, to like how hard the White House wants to push on it and how many distractions Congress has over the course of the next year and a half as we head into the midterm elections. Because if they're constantly dealing with this crisis, that crisis, other stuff that comes up, a lot of stuff gets left by the wayside. But if you're sort of legislating in the normal course of business, and you're able to have hearings, and the bill is able to progress a little bit, I think it has a much better chance than like most bills do. I think a lot of stuff is set up for something like this to have success.
Interesting. I would feel, look, I'm seeing already, like, there's just this automatic, like, between Trump, Ari, Dana, and Turkey, there's no chance this is going to happen. And you did lay out, and and I've listened to enough smart people talking about this, that the old system's still going to be there with the 4 sanctioning bodies, with the traditional terms of the Ali Act. This is just, I guess, opens up a new idea, a new model, but they put very specific sort of rules to be a UBO in that, from minimums to drug testing and health insurance to you kind of need your own performance institute, so to speak. And we have seen Nikisa and Jake from MVP, Jake Paul, show interest on that side of it. But you're not only a lobbyist type guy, a DC guy, you're also a huge boxing fan, as we established. I got to fight with the Thai guy. You have an interesting perspective that I did want to dig into more. The idea of, is this really the worst thing in the world when you consider the default that boxing has worked under the last 20 years, where, yes, the Ali Act does prevent certain Don King-like takeovers from happening, but is boxing actually better off the way it is? How do you sort of look at that debate?
I mean, I'm pretty sour on the current state of boxing, so I'm very willing to try. Not like I don't think we should make it mandatory that all fights occur on Alcatraz, or like anything completely wacky, but like
kind of cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. Maybe there should just be one place that we do all the boxing. That could be fun every day. But I don't think that the current system is really worth. I mean, it's not worth fighting for. It's not worth like really putting a huge muscle behind. I mean, it's just. I don't know. It's quite obvious that the current system is working for like a very small amount of fighters who get very well paid. And I'm super happy for them. And I would not favor anything that would ever like threaten a fighter like Canelo's ability to go like sell out an arena, make $100 million, like do the stuff that you deserve to do if you've devoted your life to boxing. But just in terms of like the rest of the sport down further from that, like, I don't think it's not working for me as a fan. I'm paying for like 7 different subscriptions to streaming services. It's hard to keep track of who the world champions are. Like I have to listen to you guys and like 3 other podcasts to know what's going on in the boxing game, which, is good for you guys and your ratings, but isn't necessarily fan friendly. So I'm sure that there will be people who oppose legislation like this. And, there's good reason. I mean, look, if you just hate the UFC and you don't want to see anyone who's involved with the UFC, like potentially be involved in boxing, this bill would allow something like the UFC to come to boxing. And so if that's like your position, it's like you just dislike those specific people. But what I would say is like, I view it less as about the individual personalities and more about like what should the law around boxing be. And I don't see any reason why it should be legal to have a certain type of corporate structure that governs MMA and it's illegal to have that same corporate structure governing boxing. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. Like the fact that they can wrestle and kick each other does not really fundamentally change what I think should be the way that it's governed by the literal law.
So, and this sort of came up on Kurt Emhoff, Boxing Esquire's podcast episode recently with another fight lawyer, Eric McGracken from up there in Canada. And I guess they sort of had a similar point about the asymmetry between how MMA is regulated and boxing is regulated, with the Ali Act applying to boxers currently and not to MMA athletes. But to them, it was sort of the opposite. They sort of had the opposite take where they said, well, yes, it doesn't really make sense that this law only applies to one kind of combat sport athlete. Probably, and this is what I guess the MMA Fighters Association, I think, that McGracken works with, has been
barely together, by the way.
Look, yeah, I had probably no UFC roster fighters allowed in there.
It's about as strong as the BWAA.
Right, well, look, you know what I mean? Oh, well, all right, then it is maybe the worst organization in the United States. Basically, the issue being. That the asymmetry doesn't make sense, but should it in fact be that all combat sports athletes have the rights that the Ali Act grants right now only to boxers, because that Act was passed at a time when MMA wasn't a major sport in the United States, and when John McCain, who I think was the senator who sort of championed the Ali Act, was sort of famously as anti-MMA as I use to his like dying to his last breath was still like, it's human cockfighting, thumbs down.
No, he did come around before his death, though.
All right. Sorry, I have look. I know that besmirching John McCain is a good way to get elected president, but I'm not trying to do that here. Welcome to our arena now, Logan. I guess no. What do you think? Like that was, and I guess where there are some of the other criticisms of the bill so far, which involved that it doesn't seem like combat sports athletes or fighters in particular were consulted much in the drafting of the bill. That if the idea is to create a business model that resolves the problem of the four belt, the four sanctioning bodies in the four belt era, why does basically allowing TKO and anyone else who can become, create a business that can call itself a UBO, such as the Brian Campbell UBO, where Logan Dobson will fight Homer Richards every week in his basement performance center in Avon, Connecticut, like that. That just creates more belts, right? So instead of 4 belts, we'll have 6, 7. Why is that better?
Yeah, this ain't fixing it. Okay. And what about all those MMA fighters that sued, right? I'm sure Dana's the best guy around.
He was the best guy around.
What about the people he murdered?
What murder?
What lawsuit?
I've never heard anyone say that Dana White murdered any people. He did. I did see a video once where he got a little physical. Okay. And by the way, Logan, we can take off our professional suits here. You can just speak as a boxing fan. As much as you want.
Well, there's a lot there. So specifically to the idea of like, well, why don't we just make MMA play by the same rules as boxing? That would, I think, at least be more legally and intellectually consistent. But I don't, again, this goes back for me to like, if 20 years ago, I told you that like MMA would be much more popular than boxing, like maybe you would have believed me, maybe you wouldn't. At that time, I think that they were probably, roughly equivalent, or make it 30 years ago. But like, it's very clear that one of these models is like attracting a lot more attention and like doing a lot more to elevate the sport in our country. Obviously, every potential business model that it is built around people punching each other in the face probably will end up with some controversy or some
slapping each other in the side of the head. Yeah,
I forgot about the power slap. I apologize. But I mean, it's just a matter of like, do we think the bill is called Boxing Revival Bill? Like, so we want to revive boxing. Do we think that we will revive boxing by like making MMA play by the same rules that have obviously brought boxing down to a point where it needs reviving? I don't think so. That's not my position. Anyone else is welcome to have that position, but that it makes more sense to me to introduce more competition to boxing than to try to sort of come down on MMA and regulate it in the exact same way that boxing is currently regulated. Again, given that I don't think the way the boxing is currently structured is working.
Interesting. I mean, the thing I would always say knee-jerk in reaction, and I do appreciate the sort of genuineness of your take as a boxing fan, is what about the fighters? While it has worked for the UFC, for them, for their investors, for their parent companies to ungodly year over year record sums of money, the real issue that any of us in the combat journalism space have with the leaders of the UFC, which in this case would be Dana White and Ari Emanuel of TKO, is that same, and before them, the Fertitta brothers and Zuffa, is that same reputation for not taking care of the fighters unless you're part of that 1% that's getting the paper bag of cash in the locker room to offset the amount that they actually reported to the state commission. What about the fact that this, it seems, and you can correct me if I'm wrong by the language of the bill, might remove some of those built-in things that were the foundation of the Ali Act to keep predatory promoters away from draconian contracts, from underpaying, from not being transparent, that type of stuff. What do you say to those fighters?
Totally. So we'll take it a couple ways. So the bill itself has like literal laws written down for several portions of like fighter protection. So there's if you want to be a UBO, like there are a lot of rules about things that you have to do to support fighters written into the legislation as it stands. Things like, you know, health and safety, minimum pay, all that kind of stuff is in there. So there are fighter protections written into the law. You know, I think whether they should be strengthened, whether it's like too much and, you know, it's an overregulation and this means that UBOs won't be able to, like, that could be sort of debated over the course of time, but there are fighter protections written into the legislation. In terms of like, would this actually benefit the fighters? A good bit of it goes back for me to the same sort of point I've been hitting, which is like, do we think that boxers are currently being very well taken care of? Like, are many boxers, you know, we understand that Canelo Alvarez is, the people at the top end are like making a ton of money. And that is awesome. And that's why I personally am happy that like the current system is not being outlawed in any sense. They'll continue to be able to avail themselves of it. But it's hard for me to see how like this legislation would make it worse for boxers than the current system is. And if anything, if they did participate in a UBO, they would have more legal protections, more legally mandated safety regulations, more regulations around fighter pay than if they were outside the system. I thought something that was really interesting was, I'm sure you guys are, as I am, devoted listeners to the Manex pod. Him and Sergio Mora were talking on, I think, the most recent one, and Manex got worked up on this issue. He was like, this current legislation, the UBOs would not have to sort of like show the readout of the profits from the fight, and that would harm fighter transparency because they wouldn't know how much money they could make for the next fight. I actually don't know I don't believe that this legislation would affect that requirement at all, except perhaps as part of the UBO, in which case I'm sure there would be sort of different disclosure requirements.
I mean, that is also what I heard the boxing managers, the lawyers, you know, that the you know, Emhoff and McGracken seem to interpret it the same way, that basically if you're going through the UBO, if this passes and you're going through the UBO route, then the owners of the promoter or the owner of the UBO would not need to disclose that sort of information to its fighters.
But I thought the funniest thing was what Sergio Mora said back to him, which is like, yeah, man, like we would always ask for that, and they would always come back, and like every fight I ever had, turns out they lost money on it. Sorry, like everything went terribly, and I'm not able to give you any upside, and you know, you're actually a terrible investment. You might never fight again. And so like the actual fighter experience on the ground with the theoretical protections of existing law does not seem to be accruing to the benefit of those fighters. And I would think, and generally speaking, this is the case in like a market economy, like more competition tends to raise behavior, not just from, you know, the people who are entering the market, but from existing players as well, not out of any benevolence of their heart. I don't think that like the WBC or, you know, current boxing promoters would suddenly decide that they want to be nicer to their fighters. But if they know that there's, you know, potential competition from a UBO and their fighters might leave and go fight in a different system, if they're not treating them a little bit better, like I could see the current system being improved just by introducing additional competition that, again, is currently illegal. You know, it's not like it just, to me, it doesn't make sense for this not to be an option. Like, at least let it be an option. If no one wants to do it, no one will do it.
You have opened me up to the idea that it may not be all or nothing. It may not be, well, if this passes, fuck, the future of boxing is even darker than it ever was. And as we've established, boxing is full of shit. I used to love this sport, right? Athletes sleep with a lot of women. It's 2013. Oh yeah, I knew that too. But here's really what I want to ask you as the educated boxing fan. Let's imagine a scenario where this does pass. Let's imagine where this allows Zuffa boxing to not start at the bottom, not start arm to arm with their promotional peers, but really have a head start on third base. Does that automatically mean, in your eyes, given what we've seen from Turki Alalshikh over the last couple of years, that it's inevitable that a monopoly comes out of this? How do you think, as a boxing fan, we would actually get there? Because right now, Turkey's still working with every other promoter, and they're still lining up to get their, you know, especially people like Top Rank who don't have a TV deal. They're lining up right now to get the money. Do you think the fears that some in the MMA media space, my partner Luke Thomas on Morning Combat, who believes, look, if this gets passed, it's over for boxing. Zuffa runs the show. How do you as a fan deal with that? I don't feel like it's overnight or automatic. There's a lot that would have to happen in between, it feels like.
Yeah, and I mean, Brian, you would know a lot more about sort of the origins of MMA than I do. But my perception is that, when the UFC came out, MMA was not really much established as a sport. And they sort of hit lightning in a bottle because like they were all of a sudden the only show in town from an MMA perspective. A new UBO coming in under the terms of this law and like trying to establish themselves in boxing is going to have to compete with premier boxing champions, is going to have to compete with Top Rank, with Eddie Hearns, the great Eddie Hearns. There will be, I think there's probably a lot, I know there's way more competition right now in boxing for a potential new entrant like this than there was at the origins of MMA. And so I think that interestingly, it seems to me like some people who very much dislike the UFC and just don't want the UFC anywhere near boxing also simultaneously like give the UFC a ton of like maybe arguably more credit than it deserves for like being able to pull something like this off. Like if they were to do that, it would be a tremendous accomplishment. And candidly, they would if someone were to come in, establish a UBO and make it something close to a monopoly in the same way that UFC is for MMA, I don't see how they do that without paying fighters millions of dollars, without like generating so much public attention and clamor that millions of people in America care about boxing in a way that they haven't for decades and decades. Like the amount of things that would have to happen for that to occur would all be fantastic for boxing fans and probably for fighters, because they would have to pay people a lot of money to like enter this system and leave the current system. And you know what? If that happens, if 20 years from now, we have a situation where like, hey, we legalized these UBOs and one UBO came in and now is like running all of boxing. Like I said, probably a lot of good stuff for the sport would have had to have happened along the way in order to justify all that money being spent and all the attention that it would probably get. But two, then we can regulate that. Like if you need to go revisit this issue in a couple decades because whoops, accidentally we made the sport too popular and now there's like too much attention and too much money in it. Okay, you can address those problems down the line. You don't have to pass one law and then be done with it forever.
You're a little too cheery that these people will make great decisions for the fighters and fans when they really only care about themselves. I mean, I'm still against it, even though I like the argument that you're making.
But if they're only making decisions for themselves, then they won't succeed. Like this bill doesn't say like we are naming these 4 people in the law and only these people are allowed to run boxing and therefore they can just take advantage of fighters, put on terrible fights and like no one cares about them, but they still run the whole show. If they suck at it and if they treat fighters terribly, like almost certainly they will not like grow in the sport. I don't see any reason why fighters would sign up with them if they're treating fighters terribly. Like and two, again, they would actually have a UBO organization would actually have more rules and regulations about the amount that they have to pay fighters, about the safety. That's written into the law. So they are more highly regulated than the current system is.
And let me let me throw a hypothetical out here from my alter ego, Rafe. It's a little Faustian bargain for you. A deal with the devil.
Is that your
here.
Burner account on Twitter?
Yeah, I should make one.
Okay, I always see you posting Sandy Ryan push-up pics, and I'm like, damn, okay.
The whole Rafist account is not going over well. But no, so let me borrow a little bit from each of these possible out futures for a successful UBO like Zuffa Boxing. That it achieves the success that it desires, that it grows interest in boxing, that it sort of becomes the prime mover in the sport. It occupies a role similar to what UFC has right now. But over time, as I think the UFC fans like Brian and a lot of his audience can attest to, over time it starts to sort of siphon off more of greater and greater shares of the revenue and profits from it, and over time sort of immiserates fighters like in the long run. If the sport was great with good and was producing really good fights, and there was organization and it sort of felt like a much more cleanly run operation, easier to follow from the fans' perspective. Like it looks good from the outside, but on the inside, fighters are kind of getting it in the ass. Would you take that? Both of you, would you take that deal? Like
I don't take things in that portal.
You're not a fighter. You're not a fighter. You're just a consumer, though. I'm saying you get a sport that produces better fights. All right, let's presume it's producing better fights on a more frequent basis, and easier to follow in terms of 18 platforms down to 1 or 2. And, basically all of everything you want to see in the sport is happening from just a viewership perspective. But you also know at the same time that fighters are getting now a much smaller share of the overall revenues and profits of the sport, and it's not as good for them. Would you take that deal?
Ooh.
Is that for me or is that for Brian?
Yeah, no, this is the first question from our category of business ethics. Go ahead, Logan.
No, I mean, look, I would not be satisfied with a system that is treating fighters terribly, like, period. I guess I'm much less down on like how well we think fighters are currently be treated. And when I say like fighters, I don't mean like the top end people. I mean like the guys who are trying to make a living at this, who are, working another job and like fighting at the same time.
The communications consultants from DC who step in the ring and get abused.
Like, I just don't think the system is currently working. And I think that in general, adding additional competition to a system tends to improve outcomes for most of the market participants. And to the extent that there are negative externalities or outcomes, address those via future legislation. And I think this legislation does address some of them. I mean, like I said, there's new rules about fighter minimum pay in here. There's rules about fighter safety that are in here. There's rules about like insurance that people putting on fights have to carry in order to put on shows. Like, there is additional provisions in the legislation currently for that. But like I said, if stuff comes up in the future and we realize the system isn't working, amend it again. That's, I think, what we need to do right now, because the current system is not working. It's not growing the sport.
It isn't. But my fear is anyone that's going to vote on this will be from the default position of either A, I don't want to piss off Donald Trump, or B, hey, I used to watch boxing in the 80s and 90s. Now I can't follow it all. It sucks. Stamp. Let's fix it. You know what I'm saying?
But Brian, that is all. I mean, like, that's basically the same calculus that goes into much more important legislation than the ones than just the safety and well-being of our beloved sport of boxing here. Yeah. I mean, it's basically like, do I want to be on the right side of the president, and what does this mean for me in my political career? It's pretty much all it is.
Yeah, shout out to Galachi joining us with a Malbec this early in the day. That's great. That's great stuff. We do have some angry people, Logan, that are calling you a plant from TKO directly. Hank Williams IV, our good buddy here, not happy with you, believes that you're just a right-wing TKO backer. How do you defend yourself?
I am 1,000% right-wing. I don't have any particular love for TKO. I'm not actually an MMA consumer. I don't watch wrestling either. I'm sort of unfamiliar with their broader business model. So I'm like I said up top of the front, I'm not actually even working on this issue professionally. I came on because my buddy Rafe asked me if I wanted to come talk.
Now they're coming for me.
Let's talk boxing. Let's talk legislation.
Let's talk math. Yes.
But no, I'm not a shill. I just am a fan and think that our sport does need reviving, because I don't think that it is growing, and I don't think that the fact that it is not growing is good for either fighters or fans. And so I'm in favor of shaking up the system.
It is a refreshing perspective, and I appreciate you delivering it. You're just, as Richard Dwyer would say, a stranger on the internet, but we definitely appreciate that. What else you got, Logan? What else you got about boxing these days? Are you Team Turkey at the end of the day? Have you enjoyed this experience? I don't mean the Brian Campbell experience. I mean the Turki Alalshikh overpaying for big fights and possibly killing a journalist experience.
Did he kill any journalists?
I mean, he has his own jail.
I guess
named
he was
after
in
him.
He was. I mean, he's certainly not against the kill. Anyway, go ahead.
And if you're going to start with cop. Go ahead, Dobson. All right.
You're asking me questions well beyond my areas of expertise. I like that that Turki Alalshikh seems to have been the man responsible for getting us multiple Better Biev versus Bivol fights. I don't think those would have happened absent him. I think that, wasn't Better Biev fighting like in random like Pennsylvania like mini arenas for the fights leading up to his fight with he seems to have made a lot of fights that wouldn't have happened otherwise. As a boxing fan, I appreciate that. I don't know anything about Turkey the man or any of his extracurricular activities.
The good people of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania are coming for you now. Yeah.
Wonderful people. Wonderful people.
Well, we know you're a busy man, Logan Dobson, and we appreciate your time here on the show. Where are you headed? You maybe take the lady out for a little weekend away, maybe a little.
We actually, if this rain that's about to hit DC clears up, I'm flying south to hang out with my in-laws in Montgomery, Alabama.
Will you be visiting
Deontay Wilder?
I was gonna say, are you visiting the statue? I know you've been there.
I've actually the statue's in Tuscaloosa, right?
I think, yeah, I believe so.
He made out with it, Deontay.
This is very Alabama specific, but like my in-laws are big Auburn people. We don't really abide by the University of Alabama, so we try to avoid the city of Tuscaloosa as much as possible. But I might have to make a pilgrimage at some point and scream "Bomb Squad" in front of a couple dozen confused Bama students.
And as a boxing hardcore, not a regular fan, who have been or continue to be your guys, right? Who are your guys?
He's got the worst guys. I already know.
Right.
He's got the worst
I'm legendary
guys.
for having terrible guys. I mean, my favorite fighters since I've been following the sport are like Jorge Linares. I'm a
he's a beautiful
huge
man.
Caleb Plant guy.
Yes, yes.
Big Regis Prograis fan. These are not necessarily the guys who win the biggest fights, but people with personalities that I sort of enjoy.
Hey,
I mean,
how fired up are you for Regis Prograis against Jojo Diaz this Saturday? Good Lord. Loser leaves town match. Yeah.
That is, I hope that they do. Actually, I mean, the biggest, for me personally, one of the sadder things about the early pandemic, obviously there was, a lot of societal tragedy surrounding it. But in DC, we were supposed to get Prograis Hooker in like April of 2020 at the MGM Grand down in Maryland. I was going to go. I was going to have like good tickets. And then, a lot of other stuff happened.
Well, there's other places in DC to find hookers, to be fair, though. Okay.
Was that MGM in the DC in the DMV? Was that the only place that Usyk has fought on American soil?
I think so, because that's where actually, didn't that fight get moved?
Oh. You're probably
wasn't that when he was fighting Chaz Witherspoon and it ended up being in like Chicago instead?
That was in Chicago. Didn't he fight Michael Hunter or Mchunu
Michael Hunter
at those
places?
Yeah,
at that MGM Harbor thing.
There it is.
Okay, I must have missed it, but yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
All right. Well, Logan Dobson, this has been great. I appreciate you giving a side that maybe us in this podcast space haven't given, even if I don't fully agree with it. I do agree, though, with you as a fan, you as a listener of the show, and you as a pugilist. Are you retired, or could we see you back again in the ring?
It's a good question. So I don't know if you are aware of the rules around amateur boxing. I'm now old enough. I turned 35, which means I can compete in the quote unquote masters division, which basically mandates thicker headgear and heavier gloves. So I'm looking for maybe an opportunity to do a masters fight, because my last amateur one, the second one I did for charity, was a ton of fun, and I ended up winning it on points. But they matched me up with this like jacked, like 26-year-old who just had like a motor and just came out swinging like so like incredibly, just every punch had like real malice in it. And like I somehow won. I actually kind of blacked out for a good portion of it, but I would like to fight another old guy. That'd be more fun. So that's what I'm looking to do maybe in the near future.
All right. Well, Pacquiao's looking for a fight.
Yeah, Ruslan getting up there in age too.
Hell yeah.
All right. Monzo's telling us Usyk also fought in LA at one point. So shout out to Usyk. Logan Dobson, thank you. God bless America. We appreciate you. Maybe they can follow you, the other candy lickers and jackers, if they're interested, or maybe fuck off. I don't know.
I wouldn't really recommend it. No.
Okay. All right. There it is. The right lean is back. It is Logan Dobson, our friend. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
In Bama. Raphael.
Let's unpack that. Look, I don't know, Brian. I think I gotta say, we can't have any more of these slick talking DC guys on, man. That was tough. There were a million things where I was like, wait a minute, no. But he's just like, he speaks in complete sentences. He like what he was saying made sense, like on face value, but also like I got the Luke Thomas in my head being like, fuck no. But I couldn't quite get it out. So yeah, we can't have any more of these educated communications types on anymore. We just got to have us dumbasses talking.
We need more people our speed, like our good buddy Saul from Louisville, representing the show. Wanted to know who the new white guy was. Never met him. Appreciate your support as always, Saul. Rafe, to close on this topic, because it's a prevailing one, and there have been very good chats, podcasts. You mentioned a few of them involving the McGracken, John Nash, Kurt Emhoff types. Really breaking this down, and they seem to be in unison more of the belief I stand in. But what did you make of the side from Logan, who, at times speaking from a political side of it, looking at how this bill is going to be addressed and whether it will pass, but also looking at it as a fan. And that's the one thing that is hard to link onto, the idea that if we do go back to what we have, we still got the WBC naming super champions so that they won't be stripped. We still got a lot of friggin' bullshit in this game. Does this sport really need the change that this bill has the potential to offer?
So I'm split here. On one hand, I think that the bill doesn't really do anything good for boxing. It doesn't seem to really be written to do anything good for boxing. They also apparently didn't consult any boxers or boxing managers or people who really work in the business of. It seems to have been crafted by lobbyists for TKO to allow TKO to create this new promotion that won't have to abide by Ali Act rules. That was that opinion seems widely shared by the lawyers and managers who work in the sport, like Kurt Emhoff, McGracken, that I've listened to, and it just seems with a little bit of, and they sort of laughed off. I mean, they kind of dismissed the protections in the bill about $150 per round and medical insurance and all, saying that like good luck. And I believe we all know this I agree. Logan is a good dude. And like, I appreciate him coming on and just giving us some of the basics about it. Also, it's interesting that he says that, he's pretty confident that for a bill like this, which isn't sort of right at the top of the nation's priority list, because of the connections with Trump and TKO, it sounds like this is the kind. It still has a good chance to actually become law. So we have to take it seriously. But for me, the bill I don't think does anything particularly good for boxing. It really just seems like it is a carve out for TKO to do what it wants to do. That said, I'm less scared of it and less scared of TKO coming into boxing and taking it over for one of the reasons that Logan did bring up, which is that like this is not early era MMA in the United States where there was a, sort of this vacuum to step into. Shout out to my dog, or is that my wife or my dog? That's my wife.
It's kind of more like your dog than your.
Yeah, fair. Well, anyway.
I've only pet one of them, to be fair. Also, no, actually, yeah. I've never pet this dog. Sorry about that. Shout out to Bear. Yeah,
we'll leave the other part of that. But yeah. No. But so I don't really believe I'm not as scared of TKO coming in and running the sport like just because they get this carve out and they can do what they want to do. I think that there's just such an existing infrastructure in the sport. That the managers, the promoters, they talk to fighters too, and they'll be saying, look, why are you gonna go work with them to get this new podunk belt that doesn't mean anything, has no history, and they're not offering you as much money as we can pay you, unless the only way I could see it happen is if Turkey agrees to put all of his money behind TKO and make that the thing, and he's overpaying everyone there now. To consolidate the sport. I don't know why. I don't know what Turkey gets out of that. Maybe, obviously he is working with them, so maybe that's what he wants to do. But
interesting that some pushback lately on Twitter of folks, the Fred Garvin types who are, always on the inside of this type of stuff, saying that like we always keep saying it's Turkey, but really it's Sela. Really, it's the
what's the difference?
The difference would be that Turkey doesn't run all of Saudi sports. Like there's almost competition under the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. It's just that Turkey's MBS's boy, he's taken over boxing, but Turkey has also failed in the past trying to lead a takeover of Egyptian soccer. So there is this idea that like, even though Turkey's at that press conference March 5th, when Nick Khan, Dana White are signing that, it's really Sela, the entertainment branch of the Saudi government, that is running this. I don't know if there's a difference in there, but apparently 9:15 a.m. will tell you the bone saw is the difference.
The bone saw, when all of a sudden they get that bone saw in your face, that's going to be a problem. It's going to be a challenge.
Does love his own box. We've known that for years. All right. I picked the wrong one there. Yeah. So you know what? Talking to Logan made me realize that it's not overnight. It's not automatic. The big in between that we don't know if a monopoly is coming, it'll take forever unless two things happen, in my opinion. One, Turkey starts using that budget to literally buy promoters. Like, hey, Eddie Hearn, you want to be a big face in this? Sell your roster to us. We'll pay you handsomely to be at the press conferences and sign new fighters, but we run your thing. And then I think on top of that, and maybe this is where Turkey's missed, and I've dunked on Turkey a few times because he's putting all his boxing on DAZN, particularly DAZN pay-per-view, where you can only access that as a DAZN subscriber. Like, it's all kind of niche on niche. If we found out Turkey had plans to do a 2015 Al Heyman takeover where he's like, yo, I'm on Netflix, I'm on DAZN, I also bought time on CBS, NBC, blah, 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 blah. Maybe I'd believe it's coming sooner than later, right? But if you don't do that, it's still just Callum Walsh fighting for the Zuffa belt title, right?
I don't think that they're going to be able to roll it up. I don't know that they have this much equity with fighters, with the people who already have a stake in the sport, and probably aren't going to be interested in just selling it out right away.
Yeah, I mean, I like the comments that people are saying on all sides here. It is a hot button topic, to be sure. We got Mr. C saying it's good to be scared of the unknown, but the reality is never as bad as what we make it out to be on our own heads. Unless you're dealing with TKO, though. That's actually worse. But hey, that's just me and my experiences right there. Oh, good Lord. I mean, what are we protecting? We're protecting Mauricio Suleiman and the other, clowns.
You got to protect Gilberto Ramirez's ability. Is that the guy at the WBO or WBA? I don't know. That might just be Zerto. But you got to protect these. You got to protect Grandpa Bob, Mr. Cancer. You got to protect the great Eddie Hearns. You got to protect Big Eye Frank Warren. You got to protect them all. You got to protect Ben Shalom. They need our protection, Brian. Who's going to white knight for these important people, if not us?
We got to protect the Duva women, okay? That's what we got to protect.
Got to protect Jolene. No, Jolene can protect herself. We've seen that on tape.
Jolene's be throwing hands. Final point on this, because I do think about it a lot. Is there any chance that Turkey and Dana's plan is actually the status quo? And what I mean by that is I know they plan on launching a monthly Zuffa boxing prospect series that essentially signs these younger fighters, indoctrinates them through the payment system of TKO rather than of regular boxing. But is there a date, do you think, when Turkey says, hey, Eddie, Frank, Grandpa, sorry, you're on the outside now. We're on the inside. Am I like missing that? Maybe that won't happen. Maybe Turkey will continue to work with people in Ring Magazine and Riyadh season cards and basically just tell them, look, you're the feeders now. You know what I mean? We take your fighters and we put them on Netflix, but that's riding the 4-belt system. I guess there does need to be a turnoff point where Turkey officially says, F you to the 4 sanctioning bodies. Now we're doing the UBO thing.
Yeah, and he probably needs to get the fighters over there first, and have enough money to keep paying them there. That's why I think there's enough there. I do think there is enough competition. Also, what is the incentive for a fighter to go sign up with the UBO when they can look at all the ways that it appears to be designed to screw them even more than they're used to getting screwed? I guess on some level, there's like a nihilistic take on it where you're just like, well, I'm gonna get screwed either way. Let me just go get this money now and I'll be on Netflix. That's not crazy, but I still there will be advisors and trainers and everybody else who's got a stake in it being like, yo, relax, chill, stay here. They actually pay you here.
It's interesting. I mean, like 915 says, can Turkey just make Eddie Hearns and the other promoters into a version of Ali Abdelaziz, the power managers in MMA? A lot of these power managers in MMA started out as or still operate regional promotions. So maybe they recreate that system, or maybe, here's the key part that Signature Sound says that also scares me. Fighters will not be able to cross promote. You sign with the UBO, you're fighting with the UBO only against UBO fighters in that silo, 4 UBO titles, 4 UBO pay. Luke Thomas pointed it out in his Aliak video. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens next. Rafa, let's talk about some actual box, okay? You know what I mean? Like some
I
fine
cannot
box.
wait. Yeah.
The kind of box that two guys can fit in, right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, people have questions. You know, do you have answers? As De La Cruz asked, will we ever fit inside the same box? I mean,
I'm pretty sure the answer is no there.
okay, thank you very much. Let's talk about Kenshiro Taraji, the strawweight champion. No more after that absolute war yesterday morning in Japan airing. By the way, shout out to Matchroom Boxing's YouTube feed for streaming this. But what about Rafe Sandoval getting the big time upset right there? Did you agree with the scoring considering Sandoval was dropped in round 1? And this was a pretty fair, right? Am I wrong?
I think it was round 4 or 5.
All right. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm the a-hole. Either way, this was what seemed with my eyes to be a fairly even war across the board. But whether they prepared their whores for that war or not, Sandoval, the American, scored the big upset. Were you surprised?
I was surprised. It didn't. I watched the fight this morning, and I was sitting there being like, when does Sandoval win all these rounds to pull out this decision? It didn't make sense to. I mean, and I wasn't watching it in the sensory deprivation chamber in 0.75 speed with no sound like I should, but I actually made an attempt to score it, and I thought, I mean, I thought it was like an 8-4 fight for Kenshiro with the knockdown, and there were close rounds in there, but I didn't see Sandoval doing enough to win that belt. I just didn't. And what's going on in Japan? They keep giving people fair shakes or fairer shakes than expected on scorecards, like no other country in the world. If I'm an away fighter, take me there. Like that, you're not going to get like dicked over. I mean, you have that kind of performance as a away fighter in Las Vegas. This was not a Kovalev Ward type fight. This was not what are some of the other Teofimo winning over Loma type fight? I thought this was a pretty easy fight to give to Kenshiro, and I guess I was wrong. I didn't see it.
Yeah, we have Mr. C calling out the score. So here's the deal. Ricardo Sandoval, by
and
the way.
One wide one is nuts.
There was. So
Sandoval's like a 10-2?
Sandoval's 27-2 with 18 KOs. The 26-year-old El Nino, they call him, fighting out of California where he was born. The judges gave it 117-110, 115-112, and then the third judge scored it for Taraji in this split decision, 114-113. So what is 17-10 there with the knockdown? That's still what, 10-2?
I think it's a 10-2 card. I don't know how you do that.
Jeez, that is wide, brother.
That's inappropriate to say that's assault, brother. Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't like the scorecards.
No, I didn't. But Sandoval did. He had the fighting spirit, though. That was a fun war.
And like Taraji, it was not his best performance. Like his jab, he sort of gave up on his jab midway through the fight, which looked very good in the early rounds. And instead of jabbing his way in, he was just sort of walking in and allowing Sandoval to who really dialed in these overhand rights to catch Taraji over and over again when he was coming in. But they never seemed to really, really rock or shake him up. I will be happy to go back and watch. It just didn't seem like it was enough. And it seemed like even in those rounds when Sandoval started to come on strong later in the fight, Taraji still seemed to be pretty close. Like he was having moments too. And in some cases hurt it. I thought he closed stronger in the 12th. It didn't seem like Sandoval did enough to win to me, but it's a close fight. And look, Taraji, I mean, it probably also has to do with the schedule he's been keeping. He's coming off of really it may not have been the fight of the year if we end up giving that to Ben Eubank, first. But his fight with Qawi earlier this year was the war of the year. I mean, in terms of just like the physical toll, that was one you're like, that takes years off of both guys. And he's been, and even though Shiro comes in with a lot of skill and ability, he tends to get into those wars. I almost think that and he may not have had the enough in the tank to try and drag Sandoval into that in this fight, because it was fought a little more at distance than some of his more recent fights. And credit to Sandoval for all that he did to make that happen. But also maybe Taraji just didn't have quite. It was a little flatter than usual. It just to me it was. We'll see. Taraji, his only other loss, he avenged it in the next fight. He's fought. This was a crazy number they brought up on the broadcast: 18 world title fights in a row.
Damn.
So he's keeping a difficult schedule.
Amazing boy.
It's worth a rematch. I hope they do make a rematch. And I think that a better performance from Taraji, he could avenge it and sort of get back on the right track for him.
Sandoval now the unified WBA, WBC, maybe one day Zuffa Boxing strawweight champion. If I look at the strawweight division champions currently populated by ESPN.com, what is strawweight? Is that the same thing as 112, right? I'm sorry, that's flyweight, right?
Flyweight is 112, superfly 115, yes. Bantam
so
118.
This was at flyweight 112. Your WBO champion is Anthony Olasquaga. IBF is Machamichi Yabuki. And then now you have Sandoval having the BA and the BC. And also Francisco Rodriguez is the interim WBC flyweight champion. So a weight class 112 we don't normally talk about. You normally talk a lot more about the R&B hip hop group 112 in this podcast.
You can come see me, baby.
That's what I'm talking about. And yeah, shout out, as Mr. C says, to the Matchroom YouTube account. We didn't have to chase any streams on here. Okay.
I'm not familiar with RedTube. I don't know what that
Never heard of it. Do you think Logan Dobson's on RedTube or Truth Social maybe?
I mean, he does see, we know what color his political leanings bleed.
Yeah. Guess what? He also bleeds red. Guess what? Too, I
all
saw
do.
one of his fights. We got more to get into. Quick talk here from the people. Cosmo Kramer wants to know, what do you think would be the betting line if Jake Paul did fight Deontay Wilder? And I'm kind of disappointed, by the way, considering Jake Paul fought at heavyweight. And I know he's chasing Anthony Joshua right now, which is a heavyweight fight. But I'm kind of like, why wouldn't he fight either Ngannou or Wilder when that's actually a fight? Couldn't you talk yourself into the idea of him being competitive in there?
Yes, a lot easier than against AJ, who has already showed us that he is completely comfortable, sending an inexperienced amateur boxer to hell, and that would be Ngannou. So yeah, it does make more sense. I would hate to see it. I mean, I think that Wilder still has enough Deontay Wilder in him to beat Jake Paul, but it scares me to think, I would be so sad. I might quit the sport if Jake Paul beat Deontay Wilder. I might.
Wow, that's very interesting.
I just can't live in that world, man.
Maybe it's a better. Yeah, all right. We got a great. Well, actually, let's do it now because he was generous enough. Ethan Taggart jumping in, supporting this podcast, and we appreciate it. This Saturday has a DAZN main event of Oscar Duarte taking on Kenneth Sims Jr. And Ethan's looking to know our thoughts on Kenneth. They said they got a Golden Boy card in Chicago. I might go to it. I only know Duarte, who weirdly down for the co-main event.
He's saying he's also weirdly down for the co-main, which is a weird fight.
Well, I'm morbidly focused as well on that co-main event, which we'll get to later. But for Kenneth Sims Jr., former big-time prospect, 22-2-1 right now, 8 KOs. The boss man is 31 years old, fighting out of Chicago. And, he's got a couple setbacks. He's got a draw with Montana Love back in 2018. Lost to Samuel Taya on Showbox in 2018, but he's really been on a run since then. I'm counting here something like 9 straight wins since then, which has included some decent names, including that upset of once unbeaten prospect Elvis Rodriguez back in 2021, a majority decision upset. It always felt to me like Sims was a good amateur boxer, a good young fighter with a bright potential, hit some setbacks. Some people forgot about him. Then when he had that upset of Elvis Rodriguez, it was like, oh, he's still here. Now he's in his physical prime. He's a pure boxer, dude. He's a tough out. Do you have a lot of history with the boss man?
I've seen some of those recent upsets that he pulled off, and I think this is a well-matched fight. Again, Golden Boy, to their credit, they do not do their fighters too many favors in the matchmaking business. Like you're going to be match tough, and this is tough. This feels like an even 50-50 fight because Oscar Duarte is very good. Yes, he lost to Ryan Garcia, which is I guess maybe excusable at that point in their careers, but outside of that, he looks good in the ring, man. He has some skill. He's not just a caveman, and he can put his punches together in nice combinations. He's got some quickness. He knows what he's doing in there, and I think this is going to be a fun fight to watch. And after the complete bizarre, okay, all right, shit, man, 12 threes is setting me straight on everything today. But if that's the case, good for Kenneth Sims. Then he's ready to fulfill the potential that we thought he had in the beginning of his career. Yep. But yeah,
He's
also
got a stick like this one that Zoe the Cat is a big.
Because Shiro has a stick, man. He should have kept using it. He would have won that fight easy. Too bad.
I know that. 12-3 still loves you, red-haired ass.
I'm happy to be corrected, yo.
Yeah, a lot of people have the same question here, so let's bring De La Cruz in with that. Xander's number one fan, Rafe Bartholomew, 22-year-old Xander Zayas on Saturday in the final fight.
Which is the Z and which is the X? Is it X Xander or Z Xander and Zayas?
X Xander Z Zayas. Okay,
all right.
He's 22 years old. He's 22-0 with 13 KOs, and the Puerto Rican-born fighter captured the vacant WBO 154 belt that Fundora had to give up in order to fight Zhu a second time, Tim Kazoo. The opponent was the battle-tested Jorge Garcia Perez, who secured this title shot coming off a split decision upset of unbeaten Charles Conwell, the former Olympian who had been waiting to get to this level for a long time. And sadly, I think it would have been an even better fight had it been Conwell versus Zayas. But Garcia Perez, if that's what we're going to call him, put on a lot of pressure. At times, he made it a fun fight, but I think the class, the boxing pedigree, the quickness of Xander Zayas won out, scoring a unanimous decision, 116-112, 118-110, and 119-109 to close the Top Rank on ESPN era, at least for now, right? Top Rank's been on ESPN on and off for decades. But Rafe, people are expecting you to come in here and absolutely drop a deuce on old XZ. What is your take on Zayas's breakthrough victory?
Well, look, I enjoyed the fight a little bit. I look. It was tough to get through that first round when I was like, oh my God, it's going to be 12 rounds of this. It's like, and that was the one where Garcia Perez actually had some success. But it was, look, I don't know, man. Xander Zayas, he looked pretty good in through this fight. Like I liked how he figured out how to completely take Garcia Perez out of that fight with his footwork and be like, okay, I'll control the distance here, and I have faster feet. I can get in, throw a combination, act with accuracy, score, land good punches, and get out before this guy can do a damn thing. And he did it over and over again throughout the fight. It was really effective, right? He throws nice combinations. Like he looks like a very polished boxer in those kind of fights. But then you remind yourself, you have to have Teddy Atlas screaming in your ear throughout all these Xander Zayas fights, which was like, against who? Like this is to win a championship, even in the 4-belt era, even with the renowned Top Rank red carpet matchmaking. This is some weak ass shit. Like, is his best win the dried husk of Pat Teixeira last year?
Ronald Cruz a couple fights earlier. Teixeira.
It is brutal. And
Lawas Bomer. Yeah, it's rough, bro. It's rough.
Even with this win, the Transnational Boxing Rankings Board can't see fit to rank a guy who is now one of the 4 world champions at 154 pounds.
Wait, is that rankings thing still real?
Yeah, they still they update it. You got to trust them because other than that, you got to go with the ring. They're not credible anymore.
No. Neither is the UBO Zuffa ranking.
Yeah, and neither are the ESPN. They don't even have boxing no more rankings. So so TBRB has him at 9th in the division as one of the champions in the division. And it actually looks right. I wanted to ask you, even with all this, even with it was a nice performance from him, would you favor him over Erickson Lubin at this point? I don't think I would.
Well, Lubin, I think, is a wild card fight because even though Zayas is not a huge puncher by any means, I think there is that one spot in the Death Star with Lubin that if you get him into a little back and forth, you can hurt him. But yeah, that's a tough fight for him. But to your point,
but Erickson Lubin is sort of like a gatekeeper in this division.
Yes.
Like a high level.
He's got
gatekeeper.
a title shot coming up against Bakram Murtazaliev. But to your point, I don't like Zayas' chances right now against most of the elite in this division. Fundora, Murtazaliev, Terrence Crawford. Who else we got here? Virgil Ortiz Jr., Boots Ennis. Boachuk is a
Boachuk would
night.
Get in that ass, man.
Yeah, man. I thought Triple G was getting that ass. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Look, I don't want to be harsh. I think overall he did what he had to do in this fight. He made comments that like, why am I going to stand and brawl? That's the only way Garcia Perez can win.
I agree.
But people, De La Cruz here is they believe Xander has no power. I don't know if he's shown evidence of big time power yet. Would you agree though? He is a slick boxer. He makes nice adjustments. There's a beauty to watching him perform, but I don't think he keeps guys. I thought he allowed Garcia Perez to be in his kitchen too often. You know what I mean? Like he adjusted out of it, but I didn't see a jab that would dissuade somebody from coming in. Yeah, he's only 22, but until he's in the trenches against one of these killers at the 5'4", I don't think we're going to know for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think that a more effective pressure fighter would have been able to stick with him and do some real damage. I hear you on the young, on how young he is and all that, Hank, but like this, like I hate to hear the old saw about like he's growing into his man strength. Like every time we say that about every young fighter who looks promising but actually doesn't have the power to be truly successful over the long run at the highest level. And we say, oh, maybe he's going to grow into his man strength. The shit never happens. All right. It's an excuse for fight. Like it only happens if they go talk to, Mr. Memo or Mr. Snack or somebody with a nice pharmacy behind them.
Mr. Fortune.
Yeah, right. One of those guys, they'll find some man strength for you, but like, it ain't because you're growing naturally. It's because you're growing chemically. So that might be a way to develop some man strength, but other than that, I don't see it happening. I just think that he looked good in this fight. He looked like a boxer who really knew how to handle himself in the ring against much more talented fighters. I think they start to take him apart.
Yeah, you're going to think he should finish at that point. What do you make in the also on this card when Emiliano Fernando Vargas, one of the three fighting sons of the great Fernando Vargas, had that beautiful pull counter one-punch KO? Dude, I mean, I've heard, you obviously know for a while that at least two, if not all three, have decent, really good potential here. A couple of these Vargas brothers, we're talking about future star potential. This guy's one of them. He looks the part. Dude, I popped for that Humble interview afterwards where he pulled his dad in. And, we good friends, but I love his daddy. Dude, are you feeling like sooner than later he's going to be in big fights and we got a real player here, or do you see some holes?
I'm believing, and also I don't know who he was sitting with someone after the fight when they showed him during the Zayas fight. That had real risk it all potential, like genuine risk it all potential. I don't know. I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't know if it's someone he's in a relationship with, if it's family. I don't know. But risk it all for that.
Yeah. People are saying, BC, you got to stand up for Zayas here. Say something positive. Look, I think he does handle himself fairly well there in Fire, but yeah, he don't have the tools to get him out of there. Maybe he grows into it. We'll see.
And it's also like maybe we're underestimating his boxing ability and the way that he might be able to move and outpoint and win exchanges and can actually take a punch and do enough to win 12-round decisions over other elite fighters. But because he's been matched so softly to this point, it's hard to believe that. It's much easier given what we see, the patterns we absorb over following the sport over a long period of time, that you see a fighter who's matched like that, it's usually because they're trying not to expose him. Now that he has a belt, it's going to be harder to hide like that. And we'll get the answer pretty quick.
All right. De La Cruz brought up a good point, because when Fundora beat Cordell Booker in that PBC card I called in Vegas, they brought Zayas into the ring. They wouldn't let him do a stare down on camera, but they did it backstage. He was the mandatory for Fundora. It was at a time when Aaron was talking about PBC and Top Rank working together, and then the fight fell apart. While I do have optimism that this could actually potentially be a fight that happens soon, because right now Top Rank has not announced a new TV deal and Fundora's coming off a big win. How about as De La Cruz shares us finding out that Zayas has accused Fundora of asking for a rehydration clause, and that's the reason why that fight never happened. That's pretty shocking based on the way Fundora carries himself. You know what I mean? He seems to be an anytime, anywhere type of guy, willing to brawl, willing to do whatever. What do you make of this revelation?
I don't really make anything of it, right? There's an if true attached to it. And I have no reason not to believe it, but I think that if they're going to need, it's weird to think that Fundora would need to ask for handicaps against that guy, because I think that Fundora is beatable, even as good as he looked against Tim Kazoo. Like, honestly, I think Tim Kazoo isn't a bad fight for Zayas if Mr. Kazoo wants to jump right back into a high level fight. He probably might be hard to sell him as that kind of level of fighter. But again, Zayas is the kind of like that. I would be interested in that. Even at this low point in Tim Kazoo's career, I would still be interested in that.
You don't think Callum Walsh could beat Tim Kazoo, right?
I don't know. I've never watched that guy fight. I mean, he's a skinhead to me.
He's decent, but he is a skinhead. Yeah, he's dating a borderline risk at all skinhead fighter. That's just my take exclusively. Mateus Frosch, thank you for supporting this pod. We respect box. We respect athletes. We respect you. Shushu Carrington also got a win on this card. Let's talk about Top Rank. No home for now. Bob Arum seemingly optimistically saying, hey, we're going to announce it early in the fall. We're negotiating now. We're going to have a couple homes. One of them will be over the air TV. One of them will be a streamer. I mean, it leads me to believe, are they going to simulcast on DAZN while also having a TV deal? Obviously, it's the hardest time ever right now to secure a TV deal under the way things have gone the last 10 plus years, where you get those exclusive contracts. And, people believe ESPN overpaid for Top Rank. People believe a lot of things. What do you believe about Top Rank's future? Are they okay? Are we all just sort of waiting out a year or so to see what happens with Turkey and if the takeover is real? Do you believe this historic brand will bounce back even though ESPN has said goodbye?
Brian, don't fall in love with a promotion that no longer exists. You know what I'm saying, Brian? Yeah. If they are not on TV or streaming or anything anywhere, they almost don't exist. It's interesting. Top Rank, always comes up when there are rumors of, somebody wants to buy a whole promotion, because there's just this thought that, Bob is in his 90s. Mm-hmm. And it's unclear how much the rest of the family actually wants to run this business after Bob moves on from the sport.
It feels like Todd wants to, but we don't see him publicly anymore. You know what I mean?
Right. And so look, they'll find some way to put fights on because they have contractual obligations to their fighters, right? Like they have a mandatory number of fights per year that they're signed to, that they're owed from their promoter. So if they can't make these fights, then they kind of just have to let the fighters go, or so. I mean, I'm sure they won't, but they might face some pressure too. It's a rough spot for them, right? I mean, it's musical chairs. It's hard to see where who's holding a check and is going to be willing to pay for boxing at this point. I guess there are so many platforms out there that you think that someone will make that mistake. Will at the end of the year still have some budget left over and be like, I guess we're going in on boxing. We
But don't
lost
you
out
feel
on
like-
F1. We lost out on all these other shit sports. I guess we got to spend it on boxing. I don't know.
Don't you feel like the new way will be kind of what PBC has, a deal that doesn't, pay them a ton, but gives them a big platform to put, I guess, to make it back on pay-per-view?
Yeah, look, that is a way to tread water, but that's not very satisfying. And one, just who are the fighters that Top Rank could make big pay-per-view events with at this point? I mean,
I actually think I actually think right now, even with the loss of Shakur and other things not happening, Loma retiring, think about it. Let's talk about it. I know that there's the potential of poaching from Turkey, who's already signed a lot of these guys to ambassador deals, but at your core, okay, you got Xander, Shushu Carrington, Keyshawn Davis, Abdullah Mason, Richie Torres, but I'm not high on him.
Bro, this is rough. This is like a
still
homeless man's row.
No. These guys are going to be good. You still got Teofimo. You got Vargas's kid, Emiliano Fernando. You know what I'm saying? I'm not pitching you Nico Ali Walsh here. I mean, who else am I missing? I mean,
I hope you're missing somebody, because that does not give me any big phoners here. No,
okay,
it's okay.
You got Better Biev and Fury, but they're Turkey fighters at this point.
Well,
right?
yeah, and Fury's not allowed in the United States anymore. So I guess that is a strong roster, but it's a strong roster for a consistent series on TV or on a streaming platform. They can't make pay-per-view events with those fighters. I think that Keyshawn, yes, has a ton of pay-per-view potential. You're gonna make him the A side on a pay-per-view.
Bob said pay-per-view's dead.
Out of nowhere.
Bob said they're not doing pay-per-view anymore.
Okay, fine.
Bob said that's the reason why they stopped.
Isn't that the PBC model though? You're treading water and making big pay-per-views and throwing some crap out there every now and then. Sorry.
PBC's been giving you pretty good pay-per-view main cards, but that's just
great. Yeah, I think they have. Yes, but like they can only get it together a couple times a year for that.
Indeed.
It's a rough spot. It's a rough spot.
It's a rough sport. I just want you to know that.
It's also a hood sport. It's true.
It's definitely a hood sport. But I will have to say this. And look, you already know there's two kinds of boxing fans. They're all cynical, but there's either the extreme optimist like myself or the extreme cynic like you and most people on boxing Twitter. Yeah. I don't, even though it's a damning statistic when people like Dan Raphael tweet out that right now is the first time since the 1940s that boxing isn't on mainstream TV. It's like,
I don't care. I haven't had mainstream TV in 10 years.
That's what I'm saying. There's really not a lot of, there's no such thing as mainstream TV unless you're like really old, to be fair, or unless you work in a bar or something. What I'm really saying is streaming is the same thing, if not bigger than TV. PBC still has a home for now. I know it's not, insanely secure. Unfortunately, 3/4 of the sport is on DAZN right now. And I only say unfortunately from the standpoint of you can't really grow it there. But Top Rank's going to get an American home. I hear many rumors that Zuffa Boxing, whether you love them or hate them, are going to get an American home. So I don't think that'll be as much of an issue. But like some of the issue I had with pushing the Ali Amendment Act as this is what's going to save American boxing. It's like, bitch. American boxing got hurt by Turkey pulling all those fighters out of it and bringing them to Riyadh at 4 a.m.
I also don't care about American boxing. I can watch the fight wherever it happens. It seems like the better fights happen outside of America without American fighters because those guys seem like they aren't as like fucking brain damaged from social media as our talented fighters are. So, it's not like American boxing has not really done a great job of advertising or giving itself a good argument on substance other than, hey, it's America, the biggest market with the most money. That is always going to matter. But other than that, there's really no case for it. Like UK boxing, a lot healthier. Saudi boxing, nobody gives a shit out there, but there's all the money in the world to make good fights. Japanese boxing is worth waking up at 1 a.m. on the West Coast, 4 a.m. on the East. Well, you wake up anywhere in the world to watch Japanese boxing. Those guys know what's up. I guess I don't really care about American like that. Like, it's hard. I care about Top Rank because it's a major player in the sport, and obviously they're based here. They represent a lot of American fighters, Mexican American fighters, fighters from North America. So great. I would like to see them succeed. I think they need to lock down a deal. And this is so you're the insider.
They got Brian Norman too. Top Rank's got Brian Norman.
He's good. Yeah, that's the pay-per-view guy right there. I mean, that's the guy with real star potential. But here's the thing, Brian. You're the insider. There are these rumors out there. Are we just holding on until Top Rank sets up something with Peacock?
I hear the cock rumors, and if it's true, dude, they should lean into it.
How does it smell? How does the cock rumor smell to you?
They smell strong at the moment, and if that's true, I think they should go all in on the marketing and be like, welcome to Top Rank on the cock, right? Like, you got to go after that. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody shafts you like Top Rank on the cock, right? You know, like that's, we got big balls over here.
You think that you create like the old HBO Boxing After Dark intro. You get like the giant cock semi in the intro, and Dan the Man is like, "Here comes the truck, here comes the balls. I love it. My favorite moment in boxing."
And then as soon as that broadcast ends, we go into Taxi Cab Confessions and Real Sex, where you're gambling. You might see a stick, you might find a peacock right there. You know what I mean? A really big one where you didn't expect that. Let's talk, not speaking of cocks, but let's talk about one other thing that happened in your area, as Hank Williams will tell us. Little Caesars Arena was sold out for Clarissa Shields fighting at light heavyweight against a soccer mom who didn't pick up the sport until age 24 and largely circled away from her. It was a full house, even without the boogs in the damn building. I'm not here necessarily to rip on Clarissa, but I know she added these light heavyweight and heavyweight titles, and it makes her larger resume look better. More power to her. She's got to get out of these divisions, Rafe. There's nothing here. And pretty soon, there's not going to be anything in women's boxing that isn't run by Jake and Nikisa. So it might be time, unless she can get Layla off the couch for $15 million, although I don't really think people would care about that either. Outside of Detroit, where they do care, how does Clarissa make people care?
I think probably work with MVP, figure out some way, at least they'll have some promotional might behind it. They'll bring in, Jake Paul's social media bullshit will pump it up. I don't know if the fights will be any better. I don't know if they'll.
Well, Savannah Marshall rematch ain't bad.
Shadeja
Green fight.
Depends at what weight class is that going to be in? If she's going to
168.
If Clarissa's going back down there to fight those fights, those are good fights. We can make those. They're worth watching. Otherwise, I mean, on one hand, I kind of feel like she's done a lot already. Like, if this is the period of her career where she's just riding off into the sunset, trying to cash in on bullshit fights, it's fine with me. I don't really have any high expectations. I'm not watching it anyway. Like, I root for her as a fighter. I respect. I do think that she is as good as she says she is. But I just don't care, and I ain't going to be there for it. So I wish her well.
Okay. All right. Detroit and women's boxing are two of your favorite things.
I like Detroit. I do want to go. Salida has a card coming up at the Motor City Casino, and that's more up my alley later this summer.
Hopefully if Sex Harrison is on that card. Did you see him? He won his comeback fight on the co-main. He looked pretty good. I mean, for an old guy, he looked pretty good. Dude, if I'm Sex Harrison, I'm like, can we make the Charlo trilogy tomorrow, please?
Prime Sex Harrison is maybe my favorite 6-round fighter in the world.
Yes.
Like, oh my God, that jab was incredible. He was like, if that he had a bad case of Amir Khan disease, but man, he's gonna go into that 7th round up 6-0 every time.
What do you make of Clarissa at the weigh-in? And she's dating rapper Papoose, and they're talking about starting a family. That she rolled the swimsuit bra thing she was wearing to expose the side boob, and the side boob had Papoose's name tatted on it.
Actually, so I don't even care about that. I got a better story for you.
Okay.
All right. Last weekend, I took my nieces to a municipal water park in I think it's in Macomb County. It's in Madison Heights, the Red Oaks Water Park. Yo, it has to have been a close friend or maybe a family man, maybe a son of Robert Traylor was there, because the guy had a full back tattoo, Trailer 3 with his signature, with a Trailer signature on it. I was like, this is not just a regular, Robert Traylor fan, by the RIP Robert Traylor, a huge 90s basketball figure for all of us. I was like, damn. Yeah, I know. I see what you're cooking and I like it.
Okay. Hank Williams calling me out rightfully. I forgot about this part. I didn't watch the whole fight. I watched like the first 3 quarters, but Tony Harrison did get dropped. I do remember that now. Apparently against a former 122er. Yeah, he repped Detroit big time. I thought he looked like Tony Harrison, but an older version. Apparently got dropped late. But here's what I really want to get your take. Did you actually watch the DAZN broadcast of Clarissa? Because Hank will let us know that if you had the sound on, you got a lot of cigar lady, and she made his ears bleed. Did you tune in to listen to her?
I did it, man. Yeah, I wanted to watch some of it this morning, but I ended up watching that Daigo Higa draw on the in the co-main of the Ken Shiro fight instead. So okay. No, I didn't watch it, and I ain't gonna. I heard it sounded boring. Everybody said it was boring. Looked boring. I bet it is boring. I'm good.
Heard Keith Thurman was going to be here. Sounded boring. Found the man. Still sounded boring. Man, I'm so proud of that soundbite. It just was perfect timing back in the day, right? Didn't mean to cut you off there on your hatred of women, but that's fine. That's fine. Also, can we say RIP to a real one, dude? Dwight Muhammad Qawi, the International Boxing Hall of Famer, the man who, when you dig into his backstory, was in Rahway State Prison at the same time James Scott was a light heavyweight contender fighting out of that prison live on TV, turned his life around after 5 years in the can for armed robbery, and then became light heavyweight and cruiserweight champion, had a run at heavyweight. But we're talking about knocking out
Matthew Saad Muhammad
in 1981 to become light heavyweight champion, losing the greatest cruiserweight fight of all time in his first meeting with Evander Holyfield before getting stopped at heavyweight in the rematch. Got stopped by George Foreman at heavyweight as well, but fought Michael Spinks, fought killers, fought at heavyweight at like 5'6", right? In the pocket, bobbing and weaving. But even if the only connection you have to that man is the Holyfield fight, you know that this guy was mean. He was about box. And I was really happy when he did get in the Hall of Fame. He was freaking great, right?
Oh, an outstanding fighter. And also just one of the most memorable styles you could ever come up with, Qawi. The way that like the bob and weave, and also the way that he had just the most evil, gigantic smile when he was making guys miss and coming back and countering them, and you see it nonstop. The way he's taunting his opponents. I mean, just a masterclass in how to be menacing, even though you're about as tall as like Beetlejuice from Howard Stern, and you're fighting at 175, 200 heavyweight. I mean, just to compete at those levels with that frame, though, and like the constant movement, the most you could watch him over and over and over again. I love Qawi. That he's, and like to see him just menacing Leon Spinks, washed Leon Spinks.
Yes. Both Spinks brothers. Yeah.
God.
Yo, he put it on Leon Spinks in that fight, by the way, at cruiserweight after, of course,
laughing at him between shots. Like one of my favorite, meanest fighters ever, and you love him for it.
5'6.5" was his listed height. Born in Baltimore, raised in Camden, New Jersey.
That's like an inch taller than Manny.
It's insane. The Camden buzzsaw. And by the way, he fought in the pocket exclusively at that height. 41 wins, 11 defeats, 1 draw, 25 KOs. But you know, that stat line doesn't do it justice. You got to go back and watch the fights. And I just loved the backstory, you know, really reading it at length when I wrote the obit for CBS Sports of like, oh shit, I didn't realize he was literally in the can, learned the sport, found a way out, and then ended up beating James Scott after they both got out of jail, which is interesting. Fought so many big names, and damn, that's a real one right there. So love it. Love it. For as Brody will tell you, shout out to Brody Moret from Canada, going from Baltimore to Camden. That's from one hood to another. That's some hard living, but he was living large. Okay. I mean, you've lived in a few hoods in your life. It's a hood sport. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you lived in like suburban Detroit. Were you in suburban LA? Is that safe to say?
No, I was in LA proper.
Okay.
All
Well,
of
you
LA
were
just
in
looks-
Manhattan proper, but was your
Not
that
the hood,
neighborhood
though.
was a little more dangerous back when you ran it?
Well,
right?
all of New York was, yeah. But like, yeah, still, it was just like there's nobody living there. It was just empty back then. Now it's full of bullshit.
Corey Johnson wants to call me out on my take that Mike Tyson was a borderline Hall of Famer. He was, folks. Please, can we stop doing this thing where people think Mike Tyson's a top 10 heavyweight of all time? I love Mike Tyson, just like your boy Kutuladzhi, right? I love him. But like, time at the top, brief. Time at the top got him in the Hall of Fame along with being the star and the attraction. But let's not do this thing where we say, who's the only heavyweights better than Tyson? Ali? Like, stop this. Stop that crap, okay? Stop that, please.
I don't know, man. I think I understand the point, and it's probably correct on you know, on the merits. But fuck that. It's Mike Tyson. It's
That's
Mike
why
Tyson,
he's in.
right?
I'm not saying he shouldn't be in. I'm just saying, like Riddick Bowe, I think they were both borderline cases because the prime was so short. That's me talking. All right.
Well, you know, what about peaks matter too? You know, the peak matters.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The tip matters too. All right. All right. That's true. Brody coming back with, what do you guys think Mike Tyson's prison record was? You know, he was knocking fools out in there. Do you think he got challenged at all?
No, I hope that he didn't do any fighting in there, right? I mean, like, you know, there probably was no reason to. I mean, I don't know. I have no clue.
Okay. Also, did you see Oscar De La Hoya's clapback Thursday today that went after TKO and Dana White over the Ali Act?
I did not. Is he wearing clothes in it?
He is. It's humorous.
That's a good
and
start.
It's right on. The only thing I don't like about it is he paints himself as like a fighter first promoter. You know what I mean? And it's like, Oski, we got receipts, bro. Okay.
Yeah, just ask Canelo, just ask Ryan Garcia or whoever.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think, look, that's just boxing. That's unfortunately the place to get a fair shake is still going to be trying to screw you over at every turn.
Indeed. Are you ready, Rafa B, to find out whether you care about this weekend?
Okay, we do. Okay, yeah, I am curious because there is that Chicago card.
All right. Shout out to Lazy Bed. Shut the fuck up, you little prick. Right? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Wow, I just made Aram sound zesty. That was wild. Okay, there it is. This weekend, does Rafe care? Let's find out. Tomorrow night, Caracas, Venezuela. ESPN Deportes is giving us Panya Pradabsri defending his WBC junior flyweight title in a rematch with Carlos Canizales. Are you in?
That sounds kind of interesting. What weight? Like is that like 108, 112?
Junior flyweight would be 108. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not gonna watch it, but I bet it's gonna be a good fight for all the true hardcore sickos who find it.
That's a hardcore fight.
Is that guy a Thailand guy? The
Those
first
two
guy?
pocket rockets. He might be
Sounded
Fastan
like it.
3K Battery's neighbor or something. Let's go to Saturday, Chicago. We never get Chicago fights after Andy Fonferry. By the way, I don't believe that you probably listened to the broadcast of Pacquiao's pay-per-view comeback, but I accidentally called Fundora Fonfara 2 consecutive times. And I
watched that fight. I gotta go find that. Was that during the actual fight?
Yes. I kept saying, wow, look at Fonfara. This is great. Oh, shit.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Saturday in Chicago, DAZN gives us Oscar Duarte in the main event against Kenneth Sims Jr. 12 rounds, junior welterweights. We talked about this earlier. It should be boxer versus puncher ultimately. Do you like Duarte to get the edge here?
Well, shoot, now what's our 12 threes, what's his name? He's in my head, man.
Yeah,
I did like Oscar Duarte, but now he's living in there rent free, and I'm thinking I'm wrong about everything. I want to I just like the look. I like Duarte. Seems like he's on a roll. I do favor the Duarte in that one.
You do favor the Mexican in this case.
Yes, I like that card, man. I do care. It's the perfect kind of event for like a weekend when there's not a whole lot of star power. That's a nice one. It has like a weird ass co-main and a really well matched main event that's going to lead to one of those fighters probably fighting for a title.
Well, Duarte is 29 years old, 29-2-1 overall, 23 KOs, and he's won 3 straight since that 2023 KO loss to Ryan Garcia in the 8th round. Let's not forget, in that fight, Oscar De La Hoya was openly cheering for Duarte and went in his locker room afterwards to post social media videos. But the 3 straight wins have been a knockout of Joseph Pedroza Diaz Jr., a decision over Boltasaran Akhmedov, and then a KO of Miguel Medueno, who can punch in that Anaheim card. So interesting stuff. Let's see if they can get him into a bigger fight off of that. We're going to find out who's sadder at the moment in this co-main event when 10 rounds of junior welterweights gives us Regis Prograis of Rougarou fame against an equally tarnished brand known as Jojo Diaz Jr. How do you actually try and handicap a fight like this, in which I like it? It's weird, but it's weird.
I mean, it's weird. The only way I just handicap it is thinking, I saw the Prograis that lost to Jack Catterall. He's not that washed. He's not washed enough to lose to tiny little Jojo Diaz, who hasn't been good in 5 years. He should win this fight no matter how bad he is at this, according to the most recent evidence that we have to look at. Now, if he is completely off the rails, not training at all, who knows? It's boxing, right? But shoot, like he got it. He can't lose to Jojo. He has to, if he needs to have like a Mike Tyson style, come to Jesus moment where he's like, I don't know why I do this anymore. I'm going to Bolivia. If he loses this fight, Prograis needs to finish immediately.
All right. 12-3 is telling you that Sims is a dog to remember that.
I
BC does like edging, apparently. Look, you got to like Prograis, but 36 years old. And ever since his 2022 knockout of Jose Zepeda in that independent pay-per-view for the vacant WBC title at 140, it's been a rough run. He did win against Danilito Zorrilla in a split decision over 12 rounds, but that was that weird fight where he wouldn't let his hands go at all after getting hurt early. Then came the very wide loss to Devin Haney in 23, and then that loss to Catterall, which was pretty damn wide too. So I don't know how much he has left, but
what has Jojo Diaz been doing other than sliding into
that guy,
DMs?
Sorry, that guy I named, Joseph Pedroza Diaz Jr., that's Jojo Diaz, dude. Sorry about that. All right. He lost to Duarte. All right, so Jojo is 32 years old. He's 34-7-1. Although he's coming off a victory over Jorge Diaz, who was 6-4 coming in, he had a stretch there of 6 losses in 7 fights, beginning in 2021. Decision loss to Haney, decision loss to William Zepeda, split decision loss to Mercito Gesta, the new Manny Pacquiao. Then he beat a scrub, and then it was 3 more losses. Split decision to Jesus Campos, the Oscar Duarte knockout loss, and then he dropped a split decision to Abraham Montoya. I'm sure those were pro box fight cards. What are we supposed to not like Jojo for? What happened again?
I don't know if he knew that the woman he was sliding in, whose DMs he slid into was underage, but I think it's that basically.
All right.
The online courtship in an inappropriate manner of women he shouldn't be speaking to.
So we're thinking Regis by KO here, right?
I don't know, not necessarily, but I think a Regis win pretty clearly.
Okay. Okay, there it is. Thank you, Brody, for that really awful update on this situation here. Nothing else on that card of note, I don't believe. Also, Saturday off TV from your stomping grounds of San Jacinto, California, correct?
San Jacinto, yes. I think that's in Northern California, but yeah.
Oh, sorry. Albert Chop Chop Gonzalez against Angel Antonio Contreras, 10 rounds featherweights, in or out? You're out.
Who? Chop Chop? I mean, it's always fun. You know, it's crazy.
No,
that
no, not Chop Chop Corley, bro. Not that guy.
Oh.
Although he's probably still fighting at age 50.
I'm completely wrong. San Jacinto is inland east of Riverside, so that is definitely southern. I was thinking of San Joaquin County, which is where Davis is. Anyway, forget it. Never ask. I'm done. I haven't been to California in 5 years. I turn in my card. I know nothing else.
Okay, well, you're gonna find out Saturday in Long Beach, California. Somehow there's no TV here, even though DAZN puts on a lot of bad boxing. In the main event, Filipino Jerwin Ancajas.
Jerwin Ancajas. It's not hard to say.
He'll be taking on Ruben Dario Cesaro, 8 rounds featherweights main event. You're in, right?
Yeah, why not? You know, for old time's sake. I don't think Jerwin's making any big comebacks though.
Okay, co-main event. Get your washed bingo card out. Gabriel Rosado against Crispulo Javier Andino, 8 rounds light heavyweights, bro.
Look, Gabe Rosado is never going to he's never going to jack. I feel like you could keep throwing him in there against, you know, like as a gatekeeper, and he'll still be sort of responsible in it. He'll still look all right. It wasn't even that long ago that he sent poor Beck the Bully to hell. You know, it's and he's undefeated in the pit, right?
Yes, he is. And you know, a fighter's been around too long when we interviewed him on our Grantland The Ropes podcast, okay, back in the day. Also, Saturday from Nashville in the co-main event, Evan Holyfield, son of the real deal, will continue his career after he had paused it after a defeat when he takes on junior middleweight Jeremiah Robinson over 6 rounds.
Don't care, man. Get the fuck out of here.
All right, I have an Evan Holyfield hat. I'm going to wear it on our next show to prove that. So he's 27 years old. He is overall, Rafe, 12-1 with 8 KOs. And that loss in question takes us all the way back to 2022 when he got knocked out in the second round. But he scored 3 KOs since then. He took 2 years off, came back earlier this year. You don't care.
Not a little bit.
Okay, there you go. That's all we got for this week. You got a Maloney brother coming back next weekend in a title fight. So get ready.
Cannot wait to not care.
All right. Monzo shouting you out for having a Gabe pick in your Instagram.
That's right. We ran into each other. I saw him at the Rose Bowl on the 4th of July one year.
All right. Hank telling us Evan Holyfield was a victim of the biggest upset in recent boxing. He was a minus 20,000 favorite, and they got KO'd by some club dude in that fight. All right. All right. Well, that's about all we got this week. I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate our friend and listener and fellow Candy Licker, Logan Dobson, stopping by, maybe giving us a new perspective to consider on this evil.
No, we don't have to look. I hear where he's coming from. All right, but no, we don't have to agree with that. Like, he's a good person, but no, we're not for the TKO bill. We're not doing that. We're not for the TKO bill.
There it is. I'm right there with you. Rafe, where can people can probably just leave you the hell alone, right?
Yeah, I actually have hired Nico Macias to protect me, so you will all leave me the hell alone.
Yeah, please. Do you have any job news on the horizon?
I don't know, man. I anticipate interviewing for more positions that I don't get.
Okay, there you go. Well, we love you. Buy Rafe's books over there at Amazon or wherever you find fantastic books like McSorley's and me. And my father, 2 and 2. It's a great book. And then, of course, the sequel to Love and Basketball, which Rafe also wrote. And And then he circled some pack rims too. You know what I mean? Tickled the rims a little bit. All right. Rafe, will you start an OnlyFans? Steven wants to know.
It'll take a while. I'll probably do milder content before I go straight into the spicy stuff.
Okay, so like banana hammocks, but not straight ball bag.
Yeah, I'm going for the Oscar level stuff.
All right.
Well, not the fishnets and the spatulas and the tequila bottles, but
we thank and the gerbils and so you said spatulas. Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking Richard Gere. That's all we got. Thank you for being weird and joining this podcast. We love doing it. It'll never go away unless we do. Then we'll do it from the grave.
I'll never jack. I'll be here to my dying breath.
We'll give Brody the last word. And then we'll also, okay, thank you. Also, let's give us an outro on the way out. Any favorites you want to hear? I mean, one time you did hit that man hard.
And I hit him hard, really hard.
I have a fight with a Filipino. We are out of here. Thank you for playing. Shoot your load. Thank you.